Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Here's a look at some of the stories we've been covering for you today. With inflation soaring, we just had the most expensive Thanksgiving dinner in modern history, 14% more than last year. It's also costing farmers, too. As we enter the holiday season, inflation still looms large. What can we expect as the Christmas shopping season kicks off? Financial expert Charles Mizrahi has some answers. President Joe Biden last week took an unprecedented move, tapping into the nation's oil reserves for the sole reason of bringing down gas prices. We'll talk to New York Times bestselling author and energy expert Alex Epstein to get more perspective on what this all means. President Joe Biden and the First Lady sent a pre-recorded Thanksgiving greeting to the nation.
And as Commander-in-Chief, I'm especially grateful to our service members and their families for the sacrifices to our nation.
The Bidens visited a Coast Guard station on Nantucket, the Massachusetts island just off the coast of Cape Cod, where the Bidens spent the Thanksgiving holiday.
I've watched them in the South China Sea, I've watched them in Afghanistan, Iraq, I've watched them in South America, wherever they are.
This is a Thanksgiving away from home for many U.S. troops, both at home and abroad. Soldiers were served a holiday meal before Thanksgiving. With inflation soaring to a 29-year high, we had the most expensive Thanksgiving dinner on record, 14% more than last year. This is according to the American Farm Bureau. Their survey shows price hikes on most products. The cost of turkey alone is up 24%, which is nearing a record high, while the Department of Agriculture says the average dinner cost is up 5%. This pricey Thanksgiving is costing farmers, too.
We were making $100,000 to $150,000 a year in profit. This year we're probably going to lose $80,000 to $120,000.
On top of the spiking labor costs and uncertainty of demand, the prices of fuel have also been climbing, and it's only getting worse.
We could potentially lose $250,000 next year. We would not have enough cash to take into the following year in order to get our operating loan in order to operate for the following year.
According to a University of Michigan survey, U.S. consumer sentiment plunged to a decade low in November. With the cost of goods going up all across the board and inflation soaring, we have successful Wall Street trader and host of the Charles Mizrahi Show here to join us. Charles Mizrahi, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Now, Charles, thank you for being here on the Capitol Report. I want to ask you about rising inflation. It's obviously a real issue. What should folks expect to see with the holidays approaching?
Higher prices, period, end of sentence. If they can get stuff for Thanksgiving, that's great. If they're lucky enough to get it, even better. But there will be empty shelves, supply chain is an issue, and whatever they can buy, they will be paying higher prices.
Now, Charles, when people are going holiday shopping and they're walking down the aisles, are the aisles going to be empty? Are you seeing that this is already an issue?
No, it's not as big as an issue because business, American capitalism is extremely innovative. And what we've already seen is Walmart and Target, they just reported earnings and they were pretty good. And what they did is they rented their own freighters to take this stuff in, to bring more supply in. So business is going to figure out a way. This is not going back to the Soviet Union style of supermarkets with one can on the shelf. Americans should not be fearing that. We might not get the creature comforts we like and be able to buy them as easily. We might have to wait. Yeah, that's first world problems. But those problems will be solved as the supply line gets back into sync and supply starts to equalize with demand. The big problem is going to be when they get their heating bills, when they fill up their cars, when they put food on their table. That's when the biggest hit's going to happen, not buying a Barbie doll.
Now, objectively speaking, what would you say are some of the fundamental reasons that we're seeing this rising inflation?
Well, it's kind of easy, right? So we are in a situation here, put politics aside, they just threw some gasoline on a fire. But even prior to Biden and the Democrats, we had at the end of last year, we saw it coming. It was no secret. Everyone was seeing it. In fact, you try to buy a car or a used car at the end of last year and you saw the problem. There weren't enough of them because the supply chain was crimped with semiconductor chips. So you didn't have semiconductor chips. Cars couldn't be completed. They were sitting in dealer lots and in factory lots, not being able to be shipped, and we had a problem there. And then people went to used cars, and then used cars are trading at the highest amount ever. I think $26,000 for the average price for a used car when it was like $21,000 or so in 2019. So you had that. Then you had factories. Factories were shut down in our country as well. People didn't want to get sick and spread the disease, the virus rather, and also in China and India. Those countries produce for us, especially China. Those factories were shut down. So you have really the mother of all supply chain issues. No one to blame for this. There's nothing that could have been done. You had a once in a, lifetime or two lifetime pandemic. And this is what happened.
Charles Mizrahi, thank you.
My pleasure.
With winter coming, Senator Elizabeth Warren questioned some of the country's largest natural gas producers for exporting record amounts of heating fuels while Americans are facing rising utility bills. In her letters to 11 big natural gas producers, Warren asserted that the price increases are being driven by energy companies' corporate greed and profiteering as they export record amounts of U.S. gas abroad. Earlier this month, 11 Democratic senators, including Warren, asked President Joe Biden to tackle the soaring energy prices by banning exports of U.S.-produced crude oil. An energy shortage in Europe and Asia is a key contributor to the rising costs of energy in the United States. Earlier in the week, President Biden released 50 million barrels from the National Oil Reserve. Some are saying this will only have the effect of maintaining current prices. That's because this amounts to roughly 2 days' worth of America's oil consumption and may just be enough to ease the added demand from the busiest travel weekend of the year, which is over Thanksgiving. Here to discuss the energy situation is New York Times bestselling author and founder for Center for Industrial Progress, Alex Epstein. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Alex, President Biden has recently released 50 million barrels from the National Oil Reserve. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, from a big fossil fuel state, says that this was all politically motivated and that this 50 million barrels is only worth 2 days of the U.S. oil consumption, which would effectively just offset the Thanksgiving travel rush. Is this true, and what do you make of it?
Yeah, I agree with the governor and the other critics. I mean, this is a president who is very clearly committed to the elimination of fossil fuels. You can see this with COP26. You can see this with his solemn pledge to a supporter that I will end fossil fuel. And what he doesn't like is the fact that trying to end fossil fuels even a little bit, like shutting down some pipelines and restricting production and transportation around the world, means higher prices. So he doesn't like the political consequences, but his political goal is precisely to restrict fossil fuel use, ultimately eliminate it, which means higher prices. So he wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Now, one of the things we hear a lot about is the fossil fuel lobby, big oil. And I'm sure there's, a lot of people there, their hands probably aren't completely clean either. But there's also this green energy lobby, which has significant influence in Washington, D.C.
I mean, if you want to look at what has the most influence, I mean, look at the direction we're going. The House just voted, basically all Democrats but one who voted for this Build Back Better thing, which is really a rapid elimination of fossil fuels, including incredible restrictions on oil drilling, particularly on federal lands and water. So the overwhelming influence right now is against fossil fuels. The green lobby is huge, but it's not just the green energy lobby, it's the anti-fossil fuel climate catastrophe lobby. I mean, if you look at something even like Jeff Bezos, who's somebody I admire a lot in many ways, I mean, he announced this climate fund that's basically $10 billion given to anti-fossil fuel organizations. He gave last year $100 million to NRDC and World Wildlife Fund, which are both anti-fossil fuel and anti-nuclear. So there's such a massive amount of money and propaganda on the green side. The idea that the, quote, fossil fuel lobby is countering it is a joke. Plus, the green movement has taken over a lot of the fossil fuel lobby. So you look at companies like ExxonMobil, let alone BP and Shell, they're promoting a lot of this green energy propaganda because they think that they can be the last surviving fossil fuel companies.
Now, where would you say the line is between man-made climate change and also just the natural course of historical weather patterns in, such as acts of God, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, and things like this?
Well, I don't think anyone really knows with precision. I mean, what we know is that CO2 is what's called a greenhouse gas or infrared absorber. So when you increase the amount of it, you should expect some warming impact, although most people don't know it's a diminishing effect. So every new molecule of CO2 adds a little bit less warming than the last. So it's not the kind of thing that goes out of control. That's why we've had 10 times more CO2 in the atmosphere in the history of this planet. It's not like the planet burned up or anything like that. But I think the key is that if you look at the amount of warming we've experienced and could plausibly experience, it is not remotely catastrophic. We've had 1 degree Celsius warming in the last 170 years. That has correlated to an incredible increase in life expectancy, largely because of the energy that we get from fossil fuels that produce the CO2. And in terms of how endangered we are by climate, which should be our focus, climate-related disaster deaths are down 98% over the last 100 years because we're so good at mastering climate. So the idea that a 1 degree or 2 degree or 3 degree change is a catastrophe, that is primitive religious superstition. So my focus is on how livable is the climate, how livable is the world, and it's getting better and better.
Alex Epstein, thank you.
Thank you.
A new survey shows that Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to say that religion, spirituality, freedom, and patriotism give meaning to their lives. The poll done by the Pew Research Center sampled about 2,600 adults in the United States. Among Republicans and independents, 22% said spirituality, faith, or religion gives them meaning in life. Amid Democrats, only 8% said that spirituality, faith, or religion gives them meaning. Meanwhile, Democrats are more likely than Republicans to cite physical and mental health as giving their lives meaning. They also mention the COVID-19 pandemic more frequently. Both Republicans and Democrats cited family and children as the top factor for giving meaning to their lives. 5 U.S. lawmakers met with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen on Friday in a surprise one-day visit that was intended to reaffirm the United States' rock-solid support for the independent nation. The bipartisan group of lawmakers from the House of Representatives arrived in Taiwan on Thursday night and planned to meet with senior leaders, including Tsai. No further details were provided about their itinerary. The visit comes as tensions between Taiwan and China have risen to their highest levels in decades. Predictably, China was quick to condemn the trip. Representative Alyssa Slotkin, a Michigan Democrat who was part of the delegation, tweeted out, "When news of our trip broke yesterday, my office received a blunt message from the Chinese embassy telling me to call off the trip." The CCP has a long history of lobbying U.S. lawmakers, both directly and indirectly. The visit is the third by U.S. lawmakers to Taiwan this year and comes just a few weeks after a group of 6 Republican members of Congress visited Taiwan. The Biden administration has also invited Taiwan to a summit for democracy next month, a move that drew a sharp rebuke from the CCP. A new variant of the CCP virus has been detected in South Africa. The Biden administration says they will restrict travel to the U.S. from South Africa and 7 other countries starting on Monday. The Biden administration is expected to require essential foreign travelers crossing U.S. borders to be fully vaccinated by January 22nd. We visit a restaurant in Washington, D.C. where the holiday tradition is frying turkeys for free. We find out what's kept the tradition alive for 15 years. And after the not guilty verdict, former President Donald Trump meets Kyle Rittenhouse at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. Trump weighs in on his trial. And a new variant of the CCP virus has been detected in South Africa. Scientists say the new variant is a concern because it has a high number of mutations and spreads rapidly among young people. The new variant is said to be even more resistant to the vaccines.
So Omicron, B11529, is named as a variant of concern because it has some concerning properties.
WHO experts said Friday this variant has a large number of mutations, and some of these mutations have some worrying characteristics. Right now, there are many studies that are underway. There's a lot of work that is still ongoing in South Africa and other countries. And global stocks are being hit hard as a result of the new variant being called Omicron that is starting to spread. European shares fell more than 3% in early trading, and the Dow Jones was down 900 points, the biggest loss this year. A WHO spokesperson said it would take several weeks to determine the variant's transmissibility and the effectiveness of vaccines against it. The Biden administration says they will restrict travel to the U.S. from South Africa and 7 other countries beginning on Monday. The CCP virus has swept the world in the 2 years since it was first identified in central China, infecting almost 260 million people and killing over 5 million worldwide. President Joe Biden will announce that all essential non-resident travelers crossing the border into the United States will need to be fully vaccinated starting on January 22nd. It also applies to those entering by boat. A senior official said the requirement brings the rules for essential travelers in line with those that took effect earlier this month for leisure travelers. The rules pertain to non-U.S. nationals. American citizens and permanent residents may still enter the United States regardless of their vaccination status, but do face additional testing hurdles. At least 600 Google employees have signed on to an effort opposing the company's COVID-19 vaccination mandate, which is said to be applicable to all 150,000 employees. The manifesto asks management to retract the mandate and create a new one, which is inclusive of all Googlers. It also calls on fellow workers to oppose the mandate as a matter of principle. Google has requested employees to submit their vaccination status to the company's, quote, environmental health and safety team by December 3rd. This is following the White House's push for vaccine mandates on companies with more than 100 employees. But that order is still facing multiple legal challenges and has been halted by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. At a Washington, D.C. restaurant, it's a holiday tradition to deep fry turkeys. They don't charge a fee, but any donations given are passed on to feed those who are less fortunate. NTD's Melina Wisecup takes us to the restaurant to see how these people are giving thanks while giving back.
This steakhouse turns into a turkey frying fair on Thanksgiving Day. Folks drop off their raw turkeys and pick them up crunchy, and it's free to fry.
A lot of people get free turkeys, donated turkeys, but don't have the ability to cook them. The headlines the last 5-6 weeks were turkeys are more expensive, they're hard to find, the supply chain stuff, those are food insecure and hungry deal that 3 times a day.
It's been this holiday tradition for 15 years, frying turkeys for free. And it only takes about 30 minutes to get the turkey crispy, juicy, and ready to eat.
My dad has kind of always fried them, so I think the juice definitely stays in there, the flavor's there, and I like that crunch. So I usually go home to Georgia with my family, so I definitely wanted to bring the tradition back home.
Next year, come out and get your turkey fried.
In the past, they had a line on the sidewalk, but now there's a quicker method. Each turkey gets a number. Around 400 turkeys to fry this year.
And the reason we deep fry these turkeys for this event, otherwise we'd never be able to cook as many turkeys in the time we have.
But yeah, it was definitely worth it. Especially, you give a donation to charity, it's awesome. There's no fee, and it just offers for charity. You should definitely charge and people give money, but it makes me feel good to give money for something that's, worthwhile for sure. And, he's cooking my turkey for me.
They have a tip jar where generous donations go toward their nonprofit organization, Feed the Fridge, where they'll fill fridges around the community with ready-to-eat meals all year.
Not everybody can help on the level that Mark does, but we can all do something. Be grateful, but be active. Go out there and do something for someone else.
And these workers are doing just that. They volunteer some time on the holiday to give back and give thanks.
It's always good to give back, man, if we can. And it's been a crazy year couple years for everybody. So it always makes you feel good to help somebody else.
Restaurant owner Mark Bucher says it's hard work, but it's worth it to support the community and encourage others to get out there too.
So we spent the last 3 days between Medium Rare and our Feed the Fridge nonprofit delivering over 3,000 Thanksgiving meals to the area's elderly that are in their apartments that just don't get out.
How do you feel after the day's over?
I'm tired. I've been going for 7 days straight with maybe 12 hours sleep.
The holiday will end, but Mark will keep going year-round with his mission to bring nourishment where there is hunger. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Americans and others from around the world have donated over $1 million to the victims of the Christmas parade attack. On November 21st, a vehicle barreled through a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. 6 people were killed and dozens are still in critical condition. Campaigns on GoFundMe have drawn just over $1.5 million as of Thursday morning, while a campaign on Give, Send, Go has raised about $1,200. And former President Trump meets Kyle Rittenhouse at his Mar-a-Lago resort just days after he was acquitted of all charges.
He should not have had to suffer through a trial for that. He was going to be dead if he didn't pull that trigger.
Trump told Fox News that there was prosecutorial misconduct in the case that was brought against the teen who shot 3 protesters, in which a 12-person jury of his peers found him to be innocent and acting in self-defense. On Tuesday, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced a bill to award the Congressional Gold Medal to Kyle Rittenhouse for protecting the community of Kenosha, Wisconsin. The Congressional Gold Medal is the highest award Congress can offer to an individual. Rittenhouse has also been offered an internship in multiple congressional offices since his acquittal. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is mourning the death of his father. Schumer posted a picture on his Twitter saying his father took whatever was thrown at him, no matter how difficult, did his job, and never complained. He died at the age of 98. Condolences were sent to Schumer from a bipartisan group of his colleagues. During this holiday season, Maryland will be offering free Uber ride credits to residents for safe rides home. 1,000 credits worth $10 each were available starting from 4 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day and will be available through January 1st. Each rider is limited to 2 $10 credits while supplies last. Marylanders can use the code MakeAPlan2021 to apply credits to their accounts on the Uber app. Another program called Sober Ride also provides free Lyft rides home for Washington, D.C. residents during the holiday season. Last year, 120 people died and more than 2,600 were injured on Maryland roadways due to impaired driving. Virginia Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin announced Wednesday that he has assembled his landing teams to coordinate transition work with the outgoing Governor Ralph Northam's administration. Youngkin said that the group would conduct due diligence across all agencies to help determine how government can deliver on his day one promises of better schools, safer streets, and lower costs of living. The team members include lawmakers, law enforcement officials, business owners, healthcare experts, and others. This Tuesday, Youngkin also talked about what he will do when he steps into his office in January. It includes striking down COVID-19 school mask mandates and banning critical race theory in all public schools. And that's all we have for you on the Capitol Report today. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.